just don't make them the same way they used to anymore. I see, back in my day when the world made a little more sense of what's going on currently now, we didn't rely on the concept of what they call these so-called quote-unquote blazing SSD speeds or anything like that. No, we pretty much use memory cards to do just the thing they were advertised. And what that thing, you may be asking, is saving our goddamn video kids. That's right, that's pretty much the only thing we did with our memory cards. Now you're probably wondering what the concept of a memory card is. Well, this is a little bit before your time. But don't worry, I'm gonna teach you today. So go ahead, youngest. I want you to sit right there and let me tell you about a story how my life got flipped upside down. I can take your minute for you to sit right there and wait a minute. That's the lyrics of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Anyway, let me tell you about the story of memory cards. Yeah. Now, in case you didn't know, and quite which I hope you do, the concept of memory cards is fairly simple. It's an electronic data storage device mainly used for storing digital media using that delicious flash memory. It was invented by the late great Fujio Masako at Toshiba in 1980, which was then commercialized in 1987, which were then known as PC cards. Now, the first instances of these cards were used primarily for computers, so back then you weren't going to find any memory cards being utilized for your NES, Genesis, or Game Boy for that fact. That honor was going to be reserved for the 5th generation of gaming consoles, such as the PS1, Sega Saturn, and the Nintendo 64. And my god, when I tell you these things were a game changer back in the days, no pun intended that is, long gone the days of having to write down weirdly shaped long passwords, saving your games on internal save backup files that cartridges used, and good luck trying to beat Super Mario RPG if you're running it from the glorious days of Blockbuster Video, because chances of you getting the right cartridge with the exact same file were slim to none. Now those were some heartbreaking days to say the least, but with the advent of technology, that's where these bad boys come in. These things shape the very foundations of how we saved our video game files. But you see, back in the day, we didn't have the luxury of cloud saves or automatic updates. No sir, we had to manually save our games on these tiny little memory cards, hoping and praying they wouldn't get lost, damaged, or corrupted. It was a constant back and forth to see who could fit the most amount of games on their memory cards. And God forbid you had that one friend that wanted to save their save file on your memory cards. I got into a lot of altercations back in those days with little things like that.
Fight back! Fight back! Fight back!
I vividly remember renting a PS1 system back in 1997. And yes, I am dating myself here, don't make fun of me. With a copy of Crash Bandicoot 2, which is one of the most visually impressive games that I ever seen at that time. With its mesmerizing 1800 polygon count and wacky Saturday morning cartoon-like art style, this was definitely a defining moment in my young gaming career. Upon completing the first level, which then prompted the option for me to save the game. But for some reason it wouldn't allow me. Assuming there was an issue going on in my system, then realizing the prompt said, need memory card to save the game. I was completely befuddled as to what the f that even was. So I did what most kids don't do nowadays, which is reading. Picked up a manual and read through to see what that thing was, and apparently all games that had a save system required one. So I had to beg and plead with my parents to take me to the nearest Funkoland at the time to buy a $20 piece of plastic that allowed me to save all my gaming progression. Now $20 was a lot back then. I didn't come from a poor family or anything, but we didn't always have it like that, especially seeing how it was mostly my dad paying for all my gamer related stuff. Never again would I had to keep my rentals past the 5-day mark before being hit by those ridiculous late return fees. I could finally play all the games I wanted without fear of losing all my hard work. One of the things I truly enjoyed about the earlier memory cards were the unique designs and the user interfaces that each system would offer. Like the PS1 Super 90s dark blue background that had tiny game icons that represented whichever game save files was associated with it. I mean, just look at them. F***ing adorable, aren't they? Now I will admit, I have broken more than a fair share of these things. I'd always get into arguments with my older brothers over who's gonna delete whose game save file to make room for a new copy of Brave Prince and Musashi. And it wasn't gonna be me, so I did the badass little brother thing and yeeted their save files of NBA Live 97 and Resident Evil 2 right out of existence. If any of you had older siblings, you know how those encounters can go. Hell, I still have the Indian birds to this day, 20-something odd years later. Another one of my favorites being the Sega Saturn. Now granted, the system itself already had internal storage that you could put games on, which was quite a great concept at that time. But for those who wanted to flex on the homies with a fully maxed out character on Panzer Dragoon Saga, you had one of these fellas. A Sega Saturn memory backup cartridge. This thing was pretty cool, allowing you to swap out between the internal and external save files. Now check out this system startup menu. Motherfucker made me feel like I was on a Starship Enterprise. Oh wait, hold up. Wrong image. There we go, this Enterprise. But what relaxed the most is in the music department, with it basically having no music at all. It's like a ghost town when browsing the system layout. Probably one of the weakest in terms of modern design, but it got the job done. Now the N64 on the other hand, most of the games saved on the cartridge itself. Now there's nothing inherently wrong about this method, but I've seen far too many instances with people losing their save data due to the internal battery dying after X amount of years. Do you have any idea how excruciatingly hard it was to get all 120 stars back in Super Mario 64? Man, hell, that was one of my crowning achievements, and I'm definitely having that written on my gravestone, no cap. But there were some outliers that actually required you to use a memory expansion, like Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. Even says so right on the box. Not to be confused with the expansion pack, that was mainly needed to improve the performance on some games. But there are a list of titles out there that you look for yourself to see if they're supported or not. You can even find a bunch of new ones today made by third-party sources that have way more features than they did back then. So that's definitely something you might want to be looking into if you're still rocking your N64 in 2024. As years proceeded and new hardware released, new innovations arose with ways we could store our game files. One of the best being that of the ill-fated Sega Dreamcast. That's right folks, we're talking about the Sega VMU, which stands for Visual Memory System. And still to this very day, is the best memory storage media I've ever had the pleasure of using. I mean, just look at it. Look at it!
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! I want all of you to look at it!
Now this thing was straight fire, taking a lot of inspiration off the Tamagotchis from the mid to late 90s. Not only letting you save your games on an external device, but also lets you play certain mini-games baked into whatever games corresponded that's associated with it. With Sonic Adventure being a favorite of mine that featured the Chow Garden, allowing me to gather experience points with my little digital friend while on the go, then which would carry over to the full game. That feature truly was groundbreaking at the time, making what I consider the first two-screen experience. Not you DS or Wii U, they had you beat first fam.
I'm really happy for you, I'm gonna let you finish. But
Dreamcast had one of the best two-screen experiences of all time.
One of the best two-screen experiences of all time.
And it had more to offer than just play games as well, by being a cool little compact device that can tell time. Now when I think about it, it was pretty much a handheld system that worked completely separate from the console, and it truly was ahead of its time. Now it did take batteries for it to function, but it was only so you could use it while you were away from your system. It still worked when you connected it back to the controller, even using it to manage your save files while out and about. RIP Dreamcast, gone too soon but never forgotten. Next up, we have the 6th generation of consoles, where we were graced with Sony's PS2, Nintendo's GameCube, and a new kid on the block, Microsoft's Xbox. Granted, the Sega Dreamcast also fell into this category of game consoles, but that was already resting 6 feet under by the time all three launched. This was the generation we were slowly starting to move away from traditional proprietary memory cards, with the PS2 memory cards first starting out at 8 megabytes, then eventually got its own hard drive support with up to 2 terabytes. Nothing too special from the original PS1 version, just having more storage options. But I do remember putting in a lot of hours on this thing. From my first save file of Time Splitter dating all the way back to 2000 up until 2007 with Crash of the Titans being the last game I played. Actually no, the last game I remember playing was Stretch Panic, and that game's hella weird.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
With this thing being over 21 years old, that means I've officially found myself a new drinking buddy. So it stuck with the tried and true, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which I highly approve of. Moving on to Nintendo's Lunchbox-inspired powerhouse, this was Nintendo's first generation when they fully embraced optical media, doing away with direct cartridge saves and now moving more towards modern standards. With it being small and sleek, they really didn't have to go overboard too much with the overall design. But one thing Nintendo did add that was severely lacking in terms of design choice back then, that thing being menu music. Let me serenade y'all's ears a little bit with these tunes. Don't know about y'all, but that was my daily wind down time that I used to listen to every day after school. Now you think something so simple would have been done a long time ago, but nope, leave it to the big end to finally set things right. Now they may not have given us standard online support, voice chat, hard drive support, or hell, even DVD playback capabilities, but they definitely had you covered with this majestic music soundtrack in the background. Now the interface for this thing is one of my personal favorites, really personifying the meaning simple and clean. And no, I'm not talking about the Kingdom Hearts intro soundtrack. I mean by in its terms of functionality and visibility. Not too overly complicated or generic, it checks all the right boxes off. Now moving on to Microsoft's first foray into the console market, that being the original Xbox, which was the most Chad looking system that we'd ever seen up until that point. This thing absolutely screamed, I'm making you my bitch today. This was one of the first systems to actually include a hard drive, completely ridding you of actually needing a memory card. But for whatever reason, if you did run out of internal storage space, they did make these 8 megabyte memory cards that you can use to transfer your save files from system to system, and make game updates when needed. Now this wasn't the preferred method of saving the game to the system, but it was still nice to have just in case the situation called for it. In terms of the interface, this one by far was definitely the coolest looking out of the bunch. Microsoft wasn't f***ing around with this one. It has such an exuberant like look to it that clearly shouts out, welcome to the 21st century. The all green layout makes you feel like you stepped right into the Matrix. And let's not forget it having the ability to load up custom CD soundtracks that you can utilize in certain games like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Now on with the penultimate nail in the coffin for traditional memory cards we have with the 7th generation of consoles, that being with Microsoft Xbox 360, Sony's PS3, and Nintendo's Wii, another great trio of amazing consoles that were completely stepping away from memory cards altogether. Again, just like the OG Xbox, they did have memory cards, but the highest amount of storage they only contained was 512 megabytes. Now we were starting to move on with hard drives, which is where this massive 20 gigabyte for the time, which was huge, came into place.
What do you say we go somewhere else?
That's a huge bitch.
And with how rapidly technology was developing and the massive amounts of data that we needed for even basic games, that wasn't going to cut it. You were pretty much almost forced to have this thing, and considering how online gaming was heavily baked into the overall experience, having a hard drive just makes sense. The interface wasn't bad, but it didn't invoke the same type of boldness that the OG Xbox had, nor even the GameCube. It was basically as static as they come. It did get the job done well enough, but I was starting to feel like I was checking my save documents from a Windows 98 PC back then. And yes, you didn't mishear me, I did say Windows 98 back in 2007. We made that motherfucker work, alright? Admittedly, not one of my favorites to surf through, but I really did appreciate the amounts of late night gamers I had with Halo 3 and Gears of War sessions. Next we have Sony's super expensive George Foreman grill, and this thing was really weird to me. It had an implemented XB cross media bar, and this thing was a headache and a half to navigate through. Trying to find even the most basic things was like looking for the city of Atlantis.
Welcome to the city of Atlantis. Come, you must speak with my father now.
I mean, it did have these multimedia expansion ports that you can use to insert things like SD cards to allow you to show pictures and videos to your grandparents at family functions. But to this day, I never met a single soul to actually use these things. Now the Wii was a special case. It boasted an incredible 512 megabytes worth of storage. Wait a minute, how much data can that store again? Oh, well that's not that impressive at all. Well, at least you had a plethora of options you can use for SD cards that range up towards 32 gigabytes. Now these were pretty cheap and inexpensive, and it came with that perfect size for that 5-finger discount if you catch my drift. Look, don't judge me by my past, alright?
It's time to stop, okay? No more.
Now the Wii games weren't all that demanding. It was basically a souped up GameCube with motion controls, and it wasn't going for raw horsepower. So the games played straight from the disc instead of being installed on the system, which negated the need for larger storage capacity. The interface for it was quite simplistic and very easy to understand. Just use the cursor to click and delete. I do like the TV channel aesthetics. Looks very interesting and something reminiscent that you would see from the MTV 90s era, which I thought was pretty neat. The 7th generation was effectively the end of memory cards as we originally knew it, with the future consoles more so moving over to hard drives, SSDs, and cloud storage, which is way more convenient. With the only instance we have with the pendulum swinging back is with the Xbox series of consoles with its proprietary SSDs, but they don't quite seem to have that nostalgic magic like the ones that came before it from yesteryear. Despite all the hassles that they did have, there was something quite magical about memory cards. They were like little time capsules, preserving our progress and all our hard-earned achievements. And when you finally beat that particularly tough game that you were struggling for weeks if not months, there was nothing quite like the feeling of triumph when you saved your progress and popped that memory card out of the console. Yeah, those are the memories alright, back in those days. But hey, at least we don't have to worry about losing all of our progress when we misplaced our save files, because I'm not particularly fond of the idea of losing my 350-hour save file from Elden Ring, and it is all in the name of progress, right? Yep, that's the history of memory cards, or a brief overview for it. I'd like to thank everybody for sitting down here with me today and taking time out to spend some time with this old man to ramble on about one of his favorite things to do, talking about video game history. That's right. And if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and drop what you call them things, a like and a comment down below. Let me know how we did. We greatly appreciate that. Come back next week and watch this old man ramble on more about some stuff from video game history. Now, if you guys excuse me, I gotta go feed old Bubba, Betsy, and whatever the hell her name is over here. I'm playing that Farmlander 2040 VR. It's that shit.